Welcome back to Wrestling with Horror. Today we're going to be looking at another one of the original horror movies of the big franchises. So today we're going to look at the Sawyer family and just see how deprived they can be. Let's get going. So as I said, we're going to be talking about 1974's The Texas Chain Saw Massacre. Yes, chainsaw is two different words in this title. Why they chose to do that, who knows. But this film was directed by Tobe Hooper, and it was essential into leading the horror genre in the direction that it would take when you get to like 1978's Halloween and 1980's Friday the 13th, and then into Nightmare on Elm Street. All those films can sort of be traced back to this one film in 1974. It was an early slasher film, and it was one of the earliest cases of having a final girl. But before we really get into this, I want to take a second and say the Wrestling with Horror t-shirt is now available on my Pro Wrestling Tees website. So just go to prowrestlingtees.com/AndrewDreamer and you can get yourself a t-shirt with the Wrestling with Horror logo on it. I would appreciate any and all support that I can get from anybody. Thank you for everybody who subscribed. If you haven't subscribed already, please hit that subscribe button. Turn your notifications on so you never miss a video from Wrestling with Horror. Alright, so let's get going with this review. So this film begins with a group of friends on a road trip through Texas in the blistering summer heat. You have our final girl, Sally, her brother, Franklin, who is in a wheelchair. Then you have Sally's boyfriend, and then a couple other of their friends. Now, along this way, they're going to their grandfather's house that is sort of abandoned now, kind of run down, but they're going to visit the house. And along the way, they pick up this hitchhiker who just, why would you pick up a hitchhiker in the first place? I guess it was different times, but who knows? I don't know. I don't know why you would do it. But they pick up this hitchhiker who just seems odd and off. Anyway, he takes a picture of Franklin. He asks Franklin to pay him for it, and then burns the picture and cuts Franklin's arm open before jumping out of the van and smearing blood on the window. And scares them all to death, as it would. So finally they come to this gas station called W.E. Slaughter. We slaughter. Funny joke. It's almost like Kim Hinkle, the writer of this movie, was placing that there as like a test run for a character name in a sequel down the road. I don't know why I'm thinking about that. I'm sure that won't happen. Anyway, so they stop at this gas station. This old man running the gas station tells them he doesn't have any gas and that they shouldn't go traipsing around any old house, and those girls don't want to go traipsing around no old house, and that they ought to just stay there. Of course, they don't listen. They go to the house. Kirk and his girlfriend decide that they're going to go swimming. In the process, they see this other farmhouse in the distance, thinking that they can maybe bum some gas or trade some stuff to get some gasoline just to get them back to town. They go up to the house, and here's where we meet our villain, our slasher antagonist, Leatherface. Now, this is probably my favorite version of the character of Leatherface. It's just, we don't know a whole lot about him, but we get it just enough to kind of sort of feel a little bit of an empathy for him, but not really, because he's still doing these horrible, terrible things. And, in a sense, it's almost like he's just defending his home, because these people keep invading his home, and he's just doing what he knows to do to defend it. Now, of course, that isn't really the case, but that's what it seems like. So next, you get Sally's boyfriend, Jerry, going to look for Kirk and his girlfriend. So he enters the house just like the other two did, and once again, Leatherface defends his home. He kills Jerry. Later that night, Sally and Franklin are at the van, blowing the horn, yelling Jerry's name over and over and over and over. Finally, Sally decides that she's going to go look for them, but Franklin doesn't want to be alone, so he goes with her and basically forces his sister to push his wheelchair through this dense forest. Dude's not the greatest. And then you get that infamous scene where you just hear the chainsaw start and it comes down onto Franklin. From there, you get Sally's chase scene. She runs. And what a lot of people probably don't realize is that all those little cuts you see on her throughout the rest of the movie are real, because she could not see anything at night and she was running through actual tree branches. She was getting cut for real. That was just part of the budgetary restraints of this movie and having to film it in these weird ways just to get the most of the lighting and the money that they had. So eventually, after running to the farmhouse, she sees Grandpa, she gets scared, she jumps out, and she ends up at the gas station that they were at the beginning of the movie. Here is where we get a sort of twist. The dude was weird all along, so it wasn't really that much of a twist, but the old man, who we come to know as the cook, basically ties her up. He puts her in his truck and takes her back to the farmhouse, where we see that the hitchhiker that we later in the series learned his name is Nubbins, he is part of this family as well. They're all brothers, the Sawyer family. So they take her in the house and they basically berate Leatherface for tearing up the door and all this stuff, making sure that he didn't let anybody else go. So they sit down to dinner, and it's not really spelled out, but you can kind of tell that these people are cannibals and that they're disgusting and depraved. And here's where we get the most infamous scene of this movie, the dinner scene that essentially was hell on earth for these people filming it. This scene is just deprived and gritty and gross, and it's hard to watch. It's shot in these flashes and cuts and loud screams, and just, it's difficult to watch because of its depravity, and it's just, it affects you. It brings out a certain feeling in you. It's an uneasy feeling, but that's why it's so effective. Eventually, Sally does break out of this, and she escapes out the window in broad daylight. She runs to the road, getting cut in the back by Nubbins chasing her. Here's where the semi comes. It crushes Nubbins, and then Leatherface, in chase again, gets a wrench thrown at him. He cuts his leg. Sally, just in the nick of time, jumps in the bed of another truck and escapes with only her life. Her sanity seems to be left behind, the way she is laughing and crying at the same time. She seems like she has completely lost her mind, as you probably would if you were in that situation. Now, if you've seen one of my other videos ranking my top favorite horror movies, this movie was pretty high on that list, and for good reason. The effectiveness of this movie really, really gets me. Again, it's another movie that doesn't really have a lot of gore to it, but what you do see is enough. Now, there is some gross things in this movie. It's not completely clean. It's gross, and it really is hard to watch if you're queasy or uneasy or anything like that, but like I said, it just doesn't really show anything. Another thing I like about this film is that Tobe Hooper later said that this was meant to be satirical and a black comedy. Well, most people didn't really see it that way. I can see what he was going for. I know a lot of people can't, but I do. And when he came back to do the sequel, he obviously leaned super heavy into that comedic aspect, which, again, I enjoyed the sequel a lot too. But overall, I think this movie is a very good, it's like a time capsule of 1974. Everything about it feels like the 70s. And like I said, it is a very nice stepping stone, and it led to a lot of good things in the horror genre. And I think we have Tobe Hooper to thank for a lot of the things that we saw later on. So that's really all I needed to say about this movie. There's honestly not really a whole lot that I don't like about it. Franklin gets on my nerves a little bit. The writing is not the most intricate, but other than that, there's not much. But, like I said, that's all I really need to say about this movie. So, Like I said earlier, if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button, turn your notifications on. I don't want you to miss anything. We are going places with this channel. It is growing super fast. My goal is to still hit 150 by the end of the year. And as I record this, we are sitting at 148, so it is very doable. Hopefully, I'm going to do it sooner than the end of the year, and we can set another goal for the end of the year. But, as always, my name is Andrew Dreamer, and I will see you next time on Wrestling with Horror.